Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Barbara Franklin with the South Carolina Aging in Place Coalition, and I brought with me today some members of our Speakers Bureau that you're going to meet during the time that we're together. Now, the South Carolina Aging in Place Coalition is a nonprofit organization advocating for people to prepare ahead of time so that they can remain in their chosen residence independently, comfortably, and safely. Now, the words aging in place are sort of a simple term, but a really big idea, and they really weren't part of the conversation, except now we're hearing our Lieutenant Governor talk about it, we're seeing it in articles, and it's really starting to come into the mainstream. It was in 2003, however, that we got together and brought under one umbrella businesses, nonprofit agencies, government agencies, government entities, and academic institutions, so that we could share the common goal of helping people in our community to age in place successfully. And our vision is that all people who desire to remain in their chosen residence as they age can do so. So aging in place is the topic for today, and I wanted to ask all of you who came here today to be with us. Does anybody want to share, what do you think aging in place really means? Anybody? What do you think?
Being able to stay in your home.
Absolutely. Staying in your home or your chosen residence. We like to use the term residence because it could be your children's home, it could be an assisted living facility, it could be a retirement community. So, anybody else? Yes.
I would say being able to identify the resources you need to stay in your chosen residence.
Thank you. Absolutely. Absolutely. We say aging in place, the official definition that you'll see in some of our materials is this. I'm going to read it to you. It says aging in place means not having to move from one's present residence in order to secure necessary support services in response to changing needs. Now, you know what we like to say? It's staying where you're most comfortable. Doesn't that make sense? Staying where you're most comfortable. Well, why do you think aging in place is something that everybody from the Lieutenant Governor and on down is talking about? Why do you think aging in place is important? Anyone?
I think cost. The cost of having to leave your home can sometimes not be an option for everyone.
Oh, it sure is. We've seen the cost rising year after year. What else makes aging in place so important to people today?
Yes, sir.
You may go.
The adjustment for the older person, just the adjustment to a new setting and maybe new regulations.
Absolutely.
When breakfast, lunch, and dinner are served.
Sure, they want to stay where they're most comfortable, where they can decide when to have dinner, when they can decide when to have breakfast. I had someone say to me, I like to eat my cereal at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I couldn't do that, if I was in an institutional setting. So, thank you, that's right. Yes, sir, you had a comment.
Well, I let her go first and she stole my I'll use a slightly different word, safety and convenience.
Absolutely, yes. And I think where we have control in our own environment is where some of that dignity comes from, and so for all of those reasons. And isn't it something that, when you come home after a long day, or if you're not feeling well, where do you want to be? Around, the environment you're comfortable with and with all your stuff. And for most people, their home is where they've raised their children, where they've celebrated family events, and it's just, where they want to be. But again, it could be any kind of chosen residence. Well, one of the primary goals of our coalition, one of our most important initiatives, is education and sharing information about how to plan for aging in place and about the kinds of resources that are available, as you said. When it comes to resources, it reminds us of a little story that we heard. There was a ship sailing out at sea many years ago, and they ran out of drinking water. The sailors were beside themselves. They were desperate. They went to the captain and said, we're thirsty, we need some drinking water. Well, the captain was thirsty too, but he didn't know quite what to do. But he saw another ship sailing out on the horizon. So he sent them a message, need drinking water. And the sailors thought that was kind of silly, but they went along with it. And a message came back, and the message was, dip your buckets down. And they thought, that's not going to work, that's not going to help. But they were desperate, they dipped their buckets down, and up came fresh drinking water. They were sailing at the mouth of the Amazon River, and they didn't even know it. Now that story means a lot to us because we find that you have to know what's around you. Many older people and their families who are trying to arrange aging in place resources don't know where to turn. In the old days, you might turn to the Yellow Pages. Nowadays, you Google. But even if you can get a whole list of resources, how do you know which one is reliable? How do you know which one to turn to? So when it comes to aging in place, being able to connect to the right solution is really important. And that's why we say sometimes all you need is the right connection. So I want to explain some of the materials that you have in front of you. One thing that you have is our Aging in Place Resource Directory. Now this includes information about many of our Aging in Place Coalition members, and it includes those that you're going to meet today. Now all of these individuals that you see listed here are active members of the Aging in Place Coalition. They've all signed the Code of Conduct that you'll see listed there. That's one of the requirements to be a member. And they also are required to participate in one of our committees, the Speakers Bureau being one of them. Now the directory is updated regularly. You have the most up-to-date version in front of you, but it's also on the website. You'll find those same resources completely updated on the website, which is this, www.scaipc.org. How many of you are on the internet and can visit our website? Well, good. Be sure to visit the website and also like us on Facebook when you get a chance. And we keep a lot of good updated information there. You're also going to find a little audience response form. And does somebody have a copy that you can give me here? All right, it looks like this. We call it our audience response form. And what we find in our presentations is that sometimes there's a question. We'll have time for questions as we go through, but sometimes there's a question you may not want to ask in its personal nature and you feel you might need some help with an aging in place issue. So we can make arrangements for one of our experts, one of our resource members to help you. We'll do that in whatever manner you tell us, personally, privately, by email or by phone. Also, if you find what you experienced today with this presentation helpful, you may belong to another group. Maybe a women's club or maybe a homeowners association that you think would benefit from this same kind of presentation. They are, of course, free. They're very customized to exactly what the group wants and how much time the group can allow for it. So we would invite you to fill out this form, hand it to any one of the presenters today. We'll treat it very confidentially and discreetly and respond to it appropriately. Does anybody have any questions about the use of that? All right, good. Well, as I mentioned to you, I brought with me some very special people who are just a small number of the Aging in Place Coalition's Speakers Bureau. We have about 25 or so people who are members of the Speakers Bureau, and you're going to meet just a few of them today. Each one of our experts is going to speak with you briefly about their area of expertise. We'll have time for a question or two after they speak with you, and we'll also have some time for general questions at the end when we wrap up. So please be assured we want to hear from you as well. But we think they have some excellent information to offer you. Now, when the coalition was getting started, we realized that there were some key elements to successful aging in place. 5 key elements. And you'll see them listed very prominently here on our banner. And they're listed here. And these are the 5 areas we're going to be talking about with you today. So why don't we jump right in and start with these very important elements for successful aging in place. And we're going to start with healthy living. Now, everybody kind of knows what that means, you know, to get your exercise, eat right, see the doctor, you know, do all the right things to stay healthy. But in the Aging in Place Coalition, we also have to concern ourselves with what happens if you need some help. What happens if you reach the point where you need to depend on some others for some other services. You'll notice in your resource directory, though, that we have senior centers that are members, and they usually offer excellent programs on fitness and healthy living. We have a physician who makes house calls, doesn't even have an office, only sees people in the home. So that's an excellent resource for healthy living. The one that we want to talk to you about today, though, is non-medical home care services, something you might need if you need a little bit of extra help. And our expert today is Tanya Longus. She's going to talk with you about why non-medical home care services are an important element of successful aging in place. Tanya?
Thank you, Miss Barbara. Appreciate being here today with all of you folks. One of the things that I want to just point out first is the difference between home care, home health, and hospice. And I know down the line we'll be speaking of a little bit of that, but right now the senior community doesn't really grasp the difference. And sometimes in our own industry we don't quite grasp the difference. The thing about it is that home health is going to need a doctor's order. And we won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but it needs a doctor's order. Home health is designed to go in and take care of somebody if they have physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, wound care. That person is usually a nurse, they're specified, they're skilled in that particular area. And that's usually covered by Medicare. Then you've got the hospice organization, which I believe we've got a speaker today for hospice. And the thing about the hospice organization, that also needs a doctor's order, okay? You can't just say, hey, I need hospice and go get one. You've got to have your doctor say your time is ready for hospice. So with the hospice, that's also going to be covered by Medicare. And your hospice can go into the home, they can go into the facility. We have a hospice house here in the area, but that's going to be the transition between end of life as it progresses. Then you've got the private duty home care company, which is a piece that I'm going to be talking about today. Now the thing about private duty home care company, there is about that much regulation in the state of South Carolina, which usually scares people when I speak to them. There is not the big brother looking over you. I can go and open up a home care company with you 5 people right now, and I can say you and you and you are hired. I go get my South Carolina license, business license. I can run it out of the garage of my house, and I can say I want you and you and you and you and you to go give her a bath, take her to an appointment, take her to the hair, make her food, and clean her toilet. I can do that, and I don't have to follow any regulations. So it's very important for the community and for you picking out a home care company what to be asking for. So what I've listed today is 12 questions. There are many, many more. These are not in any particular order. Number 1 doesn't trump number 5 on this list, okay? So what we'll do is we'll spend some time this morning on going through these questions, and let's just try to answer some of them. Again, you could take this sheet, go to your favorite home care company in town and say, hey, I want to know, number 1, do you SLED background check your employees, and do you check them for driving records? Very important to know, especially if you need this home care company to transport your mother to a chemo treatment or to a hair appointment. We want to make sure that caregiver is still got a good driver's license and their car is still in great order to take mom to and from where they need to go. And also just SLED background checks. Ask how often do they do that. There's a difference when you background check somebody at the time of employment. Companies need to do random background checks every now and then. You can be good today and go sour on Sunday, okay? So you need to know that, all right? The second thing, do you drug screen? Trust me, anybody out there doing drugs, they know if they're going to work for that home care company today, they ain't gonna smoke pot for a while. But once they get hired, guess what they might do over the weekend? So again, do you drug screen when you hire? Yay, that's great and wonderful. How often do you do it after that? Random drug screening is awesome. It's scary, but it's awesome. TB testing is also important because your caregivers are coming in and out of hospitals, facilities, or dealing with an amount of a lot of different people, so you want to make sure that they're okay. Do you have nurses on staff? Not a deal breaker for any home care company. But it is important to know, because if you have a crisis that goes on, maybe somebody can help you out quickly or get you the right information. Are your company employees available 24/7? Guess what? We don't get sick 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. What a concept. You got to have somebody who can be there when you want them. Okay, you wanna make sure that home care company can answer that phone at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, I can get you a caregiver there at 7 in the morning if you need help, all right? So you wanna make sure they can work all around. Do you offer 24/7, 365? It's important again, because you're not always gonna be being the 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. There's several other questions on there. I can answer them later or after the meeting today that you probably have a lot of questions that you want to answer. I know time is allowing us to keep it short, so.
Well, thank you very much, Tanya. I think the list of questions to ask a home care agency is a very valuable piece of information. I thank you for bringing it. But stay here for a moment because a member of the audience may just have a question for you. Would anyone like to ask Tanya a question?
Yes, ma'am.
I have caregivers that come to my house. What if I don't like her? Do I have a choice?
Yes, you always have choices. One thing you might want to even ask your home care company to do is, hey, let me interview. I want to meet 2 or 3 of your caregivers, okay? It's important that the personality works together, okay? It's very, very important that mom likes who's coming out and taking care of her. Definitely you have a choice, squeak for it. Yes, ma'am.
How are home care services paid for?
Oh, okay, this is good, and that would be on one of our lists down the road. Private duty home care, unfortunately, I will be the bearer of bad news. That's where it comes from, your hip pocket. Real simple, okay? What happens is this. What happens is, if you have a long-term care insurance policy, and I encourage everyone to look at their policy now, okay, as you're aging, and find out what it does cover. Your long-term care insurance coverage might cover a private duty home care person to come in and take care of and assist you. Also, there's some grant fundings out there. The Alzheimer's Association has a wonderful respite grant. Trident Area Agency on Aging has a wonderful grant that might help out with some extra private duty home care in the home. But the biggest one, unfortunately, is going to be out of pocket, okay? And in the Charleston market, that, you know, it's an hourly rate. It varies. Average rate right now in the Charleston market is about $20 an hour. And then there's also some VA benefits to the aid and attendance program that might be. So start saving your money. Yes, ma'am.
Does long-term care insurance usually cover it, or is it just not that common?
No, usually it does. That's a real big burst happening with the baby boomers right now, is getting their long-term care insurance. Yes. Almost every policy I've ever seen will cover private duty and home care. Mm-hmm.
Well, great, Tanya. Thank you for bringing
Thank you.
that
Appreciate
very
it.
valuable information. The next topic then is livable residences. And, you know, it may be that your ideal aging in place residence could be right under your feet. It could be that home where you lived for 20 or 30 or 40 years, but that home might need renovations, might need modifications as your needs change. You might be considering downsizing to a more appropriate kind of residence. And in any aging in place residence, regardless of what it is, we've got to consider safety issues. We have such a diversity of resources here. We have certified aging in place specialists who help you to accommodate your home. We have senior real estate specialists who have obtained a special designation to help them identify the issues that would be important to an older adult in that arena. We have people who do estate clearing and organizing services. Have you ever seen how much clutter we all collect, and especially someone who's lived in their home for a long time? Well, what do you do with all that stuff? So we have organizing experts and estate clearing services, really important resources, I think, that we're glad to have. But the expert that we brought to you today is Kelly Holman, and she's going to talk about personal monitoring systems and why those are an important element for successful aging in place. Kelly?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My specialty is medical alert service and medication dispensing. These are two big safety factors that can increase the safety in your home. It can also help people who are in assisted living and not quite ready to make the transition to the next step of the nursing home. These are two affordable services that can help you maintain that residence. The medical alert service, everyone thinks, oh, I've fallen, I can't get up, and that's all it is. Well, it's not. There's a lot more to it. A medical alert service, having a button that's waterproof, most important. I put together a list of questions when you call a medical alert service, so that you can ask some very good questions and know the services that you're getting. One of the big things is just to make sure that the button that someone is wearing is waterproof, so they can wear it while they shower or bathe. There's a difference between water resistant and waterproof, okay? Water resistant means it might work still if it gets wet. Water resistant means it will. A medical alert service allows someone in a situation to press that button anytime they need assistance. See situations maybe with a hospice agency, like maybe the daughter lives in the garage and the mom's in the main house or vice versa, and they don't want to be together all the time. It allows that freedom because she can or he can press the button anytime they need help. I mean, people have all kinds of different situations that they press the button for. They might have gotten on the toilet and now can't get themselves off. They can press the button for a family member to come and assist them instead of emergency services. It's important if you want to have responders that you can list, and that's family members and friends maybe that live close by that can help you in certain situations. It doesn't have to be an emergency to use a medical alert service. You use it as support. One of the big things about the medical alert service industry going on today, there's all of a sudden there's been like a boom of them that have just kind of popped up. Your response center is key. I mean, the equipment is key. You want to make sure it does a self-test, who's going to change the batteries, all of this. Does it work, if you don't have power? Does it work if you only have a cell phone? Of course, the equipment is key, but who's answering your calls is also very key. You want to ask if it's their employees, or are they just kind of subbing it out to a call center? Are they trained? Are they certified? It might matter to you if the company is FDA regulated and FCC compliant. You can say your product does anything and you'll do anything, but when you're FDA regulated and you're FCC compliant, you have to prove that it does what you say. So it can be, those are important questions. As far as getting locked into a contract, you shouldn't have to do that. I recommend never buying equipment because I've seen companies go out of business and no one's notified and it just doesn't work. No one's there to answer your call anymore. It just stops working. So those are important questions that you want to ask, and just that you want to understand about the medical alert service and how it can help you age in place. And then another key part is medication. Medication is usually the #1 reason people will lose their independence. It's because of some memory issues. They might be over-medicating. Go into a situation where someone's taking 2 or 3 doses extra every day or skipping days. A medication dispenser is going to monitor the medications. You're gonna download a schedule, and the medication is gonna come out when it's scheduled to do so. If the medication's not taken from the dispenser, then a caregiver is gonna be alerted so that they can call mom or dad and say, let's take your medication. Situation with a lady who has very bad short-term memory, physically very fit, is not ready to go into the nursing home level of care, and her daughter knows exactly when the medication is going to dispense. She calls her, and while they're on the phone together, she takes it out, makes sure she hears her take it, and this saves the mother from having to go to that nursing home level of care, and also it saves a lot of money. Are there any questions?
My grandmother was asking her family, our family, about getting a medical alert button, but she was concerned about it not being matching her wardrobe. Can you tell me a little bit about the options available for the medical alert? She remembers the old television commercials where.
Right. Well, of course, with technology, everything's getting smaller and better. So also with the medical alert service, the technology and the buttons now, there's technology out there. If there is a fall are a collapse and there's no movement for 30 seconds, there is a button that can automatically send in a signal for them. And it's not bad looking. They're getting nicer with like silver cords to wear them on. They're not the big garage door openers that they used to be. So it's much better. I even have some women that put it on a chain, or some gentlemen, just like your watch with the silver, you can put the button on the watch band. So there's ways to get creative so that it's comfortable and not embarrassing.
My question is also regarding the medical alert service, and thank you, you provided a lot of wonderful information. I didn't hear anything about cost, how a person would pay for the medical alert service, and then specifically, once I do pay, am I charged every time I utilize that button and somebody comes to my house, or is it a monthly fee?
Okay, it is a monthly fee. Medicare does not pay for a medical alert service. Some long-term care policies will reimburse you for it. Medicaid will pay for it through the community long-term care program, and that's for someone who is at a nursing home level of care is needed, but they rather remain in their own home. So Medicaid will pay for it in that instance. A medical alert service should not break you. It should be anywhere from like $60 and less per month, depending on if you need a wireless or if you have a phone line, those types of things. So it's not expensive. It's a good filler, like with home care services. Maybe you don't need 24/7 right now. So a medical alert service is a good filler for when that person is alone and there's not that caregiver in the house.
And I pay that one fee regardless if I use
Yes,
it
you
12
press the
times a
button
month or
as
once.
many times as needed. And most of the time, if you have a fall and you're not hurt, you can just ask for the fire department. They do a lift assist. EMS will come out. They do not charge, typically if they're not transporting. So you do not get charged.
Well, thank you very much,
You're
Kelly. That was some
welcome.
very good practical information. Excellent. Well, the theme that you'll hear over and over again in the coalition is planning ahead. And it's important in general, but nowhere more important than in this next area that we're going to talk about. We really believe that aging in place doesn't happen by accident. You can't wait for the crisis to do many of the things that we're talking about today. It's important to be informed about financial and legal issues that should be addressed now instead of waiting for that crisis. So the kinds of resources that you're going to see in our resource directory involve long-term care planning, long-term care insurance that was mentioned earlier, Medicare planning, reverse mortgages, an important tool to use your home to stay at home. But the resource expert we brought to you today is an elder law attorney, so I'm going to let Allison Fudge share with you some of the important areas to consider for successful aging in place. Allison?
Thank you, Barbara, I appreciate that. Just like Tanya, I have a handout on everyone's table. It says legal issues related to aging in place. Similar to Tanya's handout on in-home care, these issues are in no particular order. They're completely random. The things at the top of the page are no more or less important than the things at the bottom. The difference between an elder law attorney and kind of your traditional estate planning attorney is that whereas we absolutely understand as elder law attorneys that we need to talk about wills and powers of attorney, and that's a crucial element of aging in place, there is so much more than just wills and trusts and probate or estate settlement when someone dies. There's this huge area of life in between. We need to help families plan when their parents age, when their spouses age, who is going to be the legal decision maker to make decisions if mom can no longer manage her own affairs? Who's going to handle the finances? Who's going to talk to doctors? Who's going to make medical decisions? Who's going to make end-of-life decisions? We call that legal authority. Who's going to have it? If someone already has dementia, already has what we call mental capacity issues, then sometimes it's too late to be shoving legal documents that they don't understand or appreciate under their nose. That's not an ethical thing to do. I get calls on almost a daily basis saying, my mom has dementia, she's getting really bad, she can't manage on her own anymore, so I need to get her power of attorney. And my answer is the same. If she's got dementia and she's getting really bad and she can't manage on her own anymore, the ship has sailed on getting her power of attorney. The way that I explain that to people is to think of your homeowner's insurance policy. You cannot wait until your house catches on fire to go out and get homeowner's insurance. All right, you cannot wait until you've been in the car accident to go get car insurance to cover it. You have to do these things before the bad thing happens, not after the bad thing happens. So what we end up doing often, if a parent or a spouse needs assistance, they need a legal decision maker, because family members don't have magical legal rights to manage each other's affairs. We're all independent adults under the Constitution and under the laws, and just because you're a spouse or an adult child doesn't mean that you can apply for Medicaid for mom, or apply for VA benefits for mom, or make decisions about which in-home care company is going to be hired, or how many hours, or make medical decisions. You have to have legal authority. If we can't do that with documents beforehand, which is planning ahead, then we have the privilege of going to court and having a judge assist us with deciding who the legal decision maker is going to be. So powers of attorney, again, there are two kinds. There's the durable power of attorney, which is for financial, property, government benefit related purposes. And then we have our South Carolina healthcare power of attorney. Our South Carolina healthcare power of attorney was written by our state legislature in 2008. It was intended to be a free document. I personally don't charge for it, some attorneys do, but I follow the legislative intent that it's supposed to be free and easily accessible to everybody, and it's the document in which you name your legal decision maker for medical and end-of-life issues. Again, those are what we call lifetime documents, and this is where people sometimes get really confused. Powers of attorney, whether it's for finances or for healthcare, they function while the person is alive. When mom passes away, her powers of attorney pass away with her, all right, at that precise moment. Because quite frankly, dead people don't need agents under powers of attorney. When people pass away, they have what we call personal representatives or executors of their estates. And those are the people who are appointed under a will. So we call powers of attorney lifetime documents, and we call wills after death documents, and they do not overlap. They go side by side, but they don't overlap. Mentioning going back to court quickly, when we have a judge appoint legal decision makers, we call those guardians and conservators. That is done through the probate court system, which is a county by county system. So it's not family court, it's not circuit court, it's probate court. That sounds a little strange because most of the time when we use the word probate, we think of someone who's passed away. Our probate court system is actually set up where each court has two divisions. They have the estate division, the division for people who passed away, but they also have the division for people who are very much alive, but are adults who need assistance, vulnerable adults who need a legal decision maker, and those are guardians and conservators. Once we have that legal authority in place, and the reason that I start with this is because that's the crucial element. Once we have a legal decision maker in place, then we can talk about Medicaid, we can talk about the VA, we can talk about, all of the other issues. We can talk about whatever we need to talk about, but we have to have someone who can make decisions. If we don't have that, the rest of it falls apart. So that is the first piece in the puzzle, and then everything else is filled in and built around that piece. Are there any questions? Wow. Oh, yes, sir. All right, sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
If you had these legal documents drawn up in another state and you relocate, is it necessarily having to redraw?
That is an excellent question. Thank you so much for asking that. And the answer is going to be, it depends. First of all, I'm an attorney. We cannot give a straight answer to any question. I think we took an oath against that at some point. But typically, the general rule is this. The general rule is that wills and trusts tend to travel very well between the states. Powers of attorney, however, tend to be more state-specific. Using our healthcare power of attorney, for example, that was, like I said, drawn up by our state legislature. So the South Carolina healthcare power of attorney is unique to South Carolina. And we're not the only state who's done something like that. So powers of attorney tend to be more state-specific. What I usually advise people is, just like when you move to a new state and you have to get a new driver's license or identification within, ideally 30 days, it's important to have an attorney who's in that state review all of your legal documents. If something needs to be changed, it can be. If it's good to go, then you have that peace of mind. That's a great question. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I was wondering if there's a minimum age or maximum age that, or an expiration of these. Can they last 50 years? Can it last 20 years? Can it last 5 years? Or
absolutely. Yeah, they're not milk. So you're absolutely correct. They don't expire. I tell people that all the time. They're not milk, they don't expire. What's really important, the healthcare power of attorney in this state, it's very important to keep the original, to not lose the original. And that's true for all of our estate planning legal documents. We have problems if you lose the originals. With the durable power of attorney, before, that's the one for finances and property, before your agent, whoever you've appointed, can start signing checks and making financial decisions for you, our state law does say that that needs to be recorded. And it's recorded in the same place that deeds and mortgages are recorded. And once it's recorded, then a copy is as good as an original because it's an official recorded document. But wills are not recorded in court before someone dies. Healthcare powers of attorney are not recorded. Trusts are not recorded. So those documents, it's very important for people to keep the originals, to not lose them, and most importantly, to make sure that whoever they appoint under those documents knows where the documents are and has access to them. Because if they can't get to them, they might as well be lost. They don't do any good. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Allison. So, again, some very good practical advice, and I think you can all see why we say aging in place doesn't happen by accident. It takes planning, and this is one of the areas where it is certainly very important. Our next category is supportive relationships. Now, this is one that is a little bit of a catch-all. It includes a lot of supportive services. For instance, at your church, you might go to meetings or events. That could be a supportive relationship for you, just being in that environment and with people that you know and care about. But we also include among supportive relationships geriatric care managers that can provide a wide range of services to families. We include respite care programs that help support families when they are in caregiving mode. It could include the Alzheimer's Association that provides some important resource information and services for families. The Trident Area Agency on Aging is one of the important resources we're very proud to have as a member because they are an arm of the Lieutenant Governor's Office on Aging. They have an information and referral services that many of us turn to for information, and we know it's a place that you could turn to as well, and they're in our resource directory and a member. One thing that we can't ignore, though, in the whole continuum of aging in place is the issues related to end of life. So you will see several hospice organizations that provide a great deal of support for end of life, both for the individual and for their families. The resource expert we brought to you today is a person who can speak very eloquently about funeral pre-planning. So I'd like Mark Smith to tell you about the importance of this issue in successful aging in place. Mark?
Thank you very much, Barbara, and thank you again for all of you for being here today. Again, as you've been told before, there's an informational sheet on your tables in front of you that'll highlight some of those information. A little bit about funeral pre-planning. I'd like to have this presentation be a little more informal than giving you the questions and talk about what is it, why do it, and of course, how do you do it. First and foremost, what is it? When we talk about end-of-life planning and the importance of end-of-life planning, we want to get rid of the misnomer that those coming into the funeral home to pre-plan their final wishes aren't necessarily planning to end their life. They're actually planning to do just the opposite, have a much more abundant life and a freeing life, knowing that when the worst day of their family's life happens, most of those decisions that someone will have to make are already answers. What I'm simply saying is they're leaving their family with answers, not questions. So why prearrange? What are some of the benefits of prearranging? Why would one want to do that? And there's two steps to it. Why would one want to prearrange? One, as I said earlier, it makes your wishes known. Earlier we heard our attorney speak about that we're referring to as in our documents maybe as not necessarily being a carton of milk, that we don't expire. I would beg to differ. The death rate is still 100%. It is not optional. So someone, with a little tongue-in-cheek I say that, but with all due respect, death is not optional. It's something that's going to happen to all of us. We have a birth date, we have a dash between our death date, and we will all have one someday. There's been many talks about the dash. Let's make sure that we make that dash count. And part of making that dash count is, again, leaving your family with some questions. Some of those benefits of why one would want to prearrange, just simply peace of mind, knowing that those wishes are made. not leaving those decisions for family members. Also, to make sure, as we heard earlier, part of knowing what resources are out in the community is having the right connections. There are so many benefits that go unused by families, as we've heard many, many times, such as even death benefits, veterans benefits. There are even many insurance policies that never get death claims and they go unclaimed, and family members have often paid on those premiums for many, many years. So we want to gather all those documents, put them in safekeeping, and have those available for your family when the time comes. Also, it reflects your own wishes. Maybe everyone in your family has been buried, but some of your friends and folks that you've gone to church or temple with are considering being cremated. And you want to come find out what some of the options are in cremation, as there is a significant growing trend in cremation in the U.S. In fact, there was a recent article in the paper outlining those trends in the growth of cremation. Also, there are the family members who just want to be organized. A short story that I heard that I really can relate to. If you're planning a family vacation, you're backing out of your driveway, and you check the mail before you left, and you get a notification that your homeowner's insurance has collapsed. Would you continue to go on vacation, or would you run back in the house, or maybe pick the cell phone up and call your insurance agent to make sure that home, one of your greatest assets, is protected? Probably you would say, like most people, would call that insurance agent and get that policy enforced so you can have peace of mind going on vacation. Do you know the odds of losing your house to a fire or to a tragedy is less than 1 in 80,000 of a chance that you'd lose your home to a fire or a tragedy? But yet, you've backed out of that driveway and you've not prearranged and taken care of those final wishes, and your chances of dying are 1 in 1. So it's really kind of interesting to kind of think about having those insurances in place. And some of the advantages, if you wanted to take the second step of pre-funding, it takes care of all the financial resources of those. So how do you do it? We've talked about what funeral pre-planning is, why do it, then how do you do it? It's a simple 3-step process. One is just simply recording your information. Taking the time to gather that DD-214, your resume, your birth certificate, and recording all that vital information and having that on file at the funeral home so it's easily accessible when that time comes for your family members, so not scrambling for those documents. Oftentimes we have widows and widowers who may be in a second or third marriage and they never knew their spouse's mother, let alone know her maiden name. The second part of that is to select the type of arrangements you want, if you want it to be buried or cremated. And if you're thinking of cremation, do you want those cremated remains buried, scattered, or keeping them somewhere? And then again, the third and final step of pre-arranging and making your wishes known would be deciding if pre-funding those arrangements is right or wrong for your family. So again, a quick recap of that, how do you pre-arrange it? The first step is just simply to record the information down. It takes no more than about 10 or 15 minutes. You can do it in your own privacy of your own home through a lot of websites or through planning guides that are available. The second step is to decide what type of an arrangement would be appropriate for you, and services would be included in those, burial or cremation. And then the third and final step, find out what those arrangements cost and decide if pre-arranging and pre-paying for those arrangements is right and fitting for you and your situation with your family. Are there any questions about funeral pre-planning? Please.
What happens if I pre-arrange and prepay and then I move out of state?
Very, very good question. Especially applicable here in Charleston, where we're a resort, retirement, coastal community with significant population growth, people coming in here. They talk about the been heres and the come heres. There's a lot more come heres than been heres. Very, very important. When you pre-arrange your funeral, it is 100% transferable to you, and if there's going to be any money that exchange, you want to make sure that those funds are placed into an insurance-funded vehicle, and you never pay those pre-arranged funerals directly to the funeral home. You want to make sure there's a funding company, i.e. an insurance company, that those funds are placed in, and the funeral home is simply the beneficiary of those funds when the services are needed and rendered, should you still live in that community. If you relocate to a different community, or the funeral home goes out of business, or you decide even 6 months later, I want to do my funeral with the funeral home down the street, you simply name a new beneficiary of that. So those arrangements, plus all the interest that accrues in that account, should transfer with you from state to state and area to area. Barbara, thank you all so very much for the opportunity to talk about end-of-life planning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. I think you can see this is just one of many types of supportive relationships that you'll find being available through the coalition. We have one last element to speak about, and there are many times when we think this one should be moved right up to the top because it is such a fundamental building block for aging in place. What happens if they take the car keys away? It's not something you think about, but someday you might decide to put the car keys away. Someone in your family might make that happen, or your doctor might request it. So it's an important element because how are you going to get to your church? How are you going to get to do shopping? How are you going to get to medical appointments and to social engagements? That was an issue that was facing many, many seniors that we had talked with. And we knew it was an issue that needed to be solved. There is, of course, public transportation like CARTA. There are programs like Teleride, which operates 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. So what about the person that wants to do something other than those hours? There are taxis, of course. But when we looked at it, we realized there was a gap. And fortunately, we were able to bring a program to Charleston to help fill that gap. Has anyone heard of ITN, the Independent Transportation Network? Well, good. Some of you may have already had some involvement with ITN. I'm very proud to say that the Aging in Place Coalition has been involved since the inception of it, been very supportive. We've served on their board, we've served in a fundraising capacity, and many of us are volunteer drivers, taking seniors to the places they need or want to go every day. We've given you a little fact sheet about ITN. What you can see is that it's for people 60 and over, and for those who are visually impaired at any age. ITN operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and it is vitally important that volunteers are available for the rides. 60% of the rides have to be done by volunteers, or the program simply won't work. There are some paid drivers who fill in the gaps when we can't get volunteers. One of the unique things about ITN, I think, is that we offer door-through-door service, meaning we don't just sit in the driveway and honk the horn the way a taxi cab would. No offense meant, but we actually go up to the door, help the person out to our car, and get them in, and if they have packages, we help them with those and get them back into their homes. So it's a very unique service. Those of us who are involved as drivers really enjoy the interaction we have with seniors, and we like to think that they enjoy us as well. ITN is something that you don't have to use all the time. My mother, for instance, is a member rider with ITN who uses it occasionally when she has to go somewhere that she's not comfortable driving, or maybe in the evening. So it's a really valuable service. As you might imagine, most of the rides, 60% of them, are for medical appointments. That's not surprising, but does anybody want to take a stab at what would be the second most important use of ITN? What do you think is the reason people would use it? Anybody?
Hair appointments.
Hair appointments, absolutely, yes. There's a little lady who we take to a hair appointment every single Friday, and it is not just the hair appointment. It is a social engagement for her. She goes to the beauty salon and sees all of her friends and has a good opportunity to chat. So we know that we are performing a really valuable service. So if it's something that you can help us with by being a volunteer driver, we welcome that, of course. If you're in a situation where driving is becoming difficult, you may want to consider it. And if you know someone that you love and care about who needs this kind of help, we have information in the directory. The very last page is some good information on how to make contact with ITN and become a member rider. There are fees involved. You can learn more about those details by contacting ITN or visiting their website. There are about 11 or 12 ITNs around the country, so we're really proud to be part of bringing that service here. Any particular questions about ITN? All right, well, good. I think we've brought you quite an array of resource information today. Are there any other general questions that anyone has? I think we've offered the opportunity to speak to each of our resource experts, and we'll stick around for anything else. We'd also invite you to put any additional questions on the form that I've given you. Let us know about any groups that you would, you think would benefit from a program like this, and we'll customize it for them. Yes, did you have a question, ma'am?
How do we contact you if we want a presentation for another group?
Oh, that's a very good question. Probably the best way, speak to anybody on the Speakers Bureau. We're all happy to do that and to organize it. But you could also put it on the response form that we've given you and just hand it to us. That way we'll have all the contact information. If you don't have the contact information with you today, you can go to the website, and there's a place where you can submit a speaker request. So that, I think, would be the best way. We have resource directories for all of you, and we have a few extras if you'd like to take one for a neighbor or a friend or someone else that you think would benefit. I'd like to ask you, before we wrap up here, we're always interested in any feedback. Were there things that you as an audience heard today that maybe you didn't know about before? We of course hope you dipped your buckets down and learned about some things that were new. Did anybody learn anything new that they hadn't heard before? You did? Would you like to share that?
Well, I love about the pre-planning, and I'm a big fan of that. I've got 2 children and newly divorced. So not only do I need to do estate planning and redo my will, I also have to now think about doing my pre-planning for my funeral, so that doesn't fall to my kids to do. And one thing I've learned about it, but I'm not 100% sure it's true, I think you can pay for the service and you can pay for it over time, which is someone who supports oneself. I love the idea of paying for that over time.
That's true.
Right.
5, 7, or 10 years.
Well, very good. So we definitely opened your mind to some things that you needed to do to plan ahead for successful aging in place. Anyone else have something that they picked up on today? Well, if not, yes, ma'am.
I was wondering, I know someone who needs some in-home care services. How would I get in touch with your speaker?
Well, thank you very much for reminding me of this. This is something we do at every one of our presentations, and I simply forgot about it. So thank you very much for that question. You know, as I said at the outset, sometimes all you need is the right connection, and we're very intent in coming here today to share information and resource information with you and to demonstrate that the various areas of expertise. But it is important to make those connections, so I did neglect that. As I said, we have about 25 members of our Speakers Bureau, but the experts I brought with you today, I wanted you to be able to make connections with. So in the area of healthy living, you heard from Tanya Longest, who's with All Care Living Services, and is very prominent in the healthy living section because it's listed first. A is for all care. So you'll find Tanya listed there. In the livable residence area, you heard about personal monitoring systems, and you heard from Kelly Holman with Roper St. Francis Lifeline, who's listed under livable residences. In financial and legal, you heard about elder law services, and your speaker was Allison Fudge with Low Country Law Office on aging, mental health, and disabilities. In the supportive relationships area, you'll see, by the way, that your resource directory is organized just as it is here and in the same manner that we talked about it. You heard from Mark Smith, owner of McAllister Smith Funeral Homes, and also Palmetto Cremation Services. And then, of course, we talked about transportation, which is a nonprofit agency that we support, and there's a full page of information about ITN in your resource directory. So thanks for allowing me to help you make those connections. There are many others, of course, that you can connect with here. So I'd like to thank all of you for being with us today. I think our presenters will stick around for any additional information or comments that you'd like to share. Thank you.